What is up, Dunamis? Welcome back to our very last episode of Loan Me Your Eyes. I know, bittersweet, but I'm excited for today's because today my special guest is, come on in, KJ. Hi, KJ. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm not gonna lie, a little bit tired, but I'm doing great. I'm doing
good.
Thank you so much for joining us. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. For those who just haven't seen our other episode and this is your first episode, what are you doing? Check out our other episodes as well. They're fantastic. But if this is your first time, just to give you a little bit of perspective of what we're going to be talking about. Throughout this series, I sat down with people from different races, ethnicities, walks of life, and kind of talked with them about what it means to be them, living here in the U.S. with all the different labels and all the different things that America kind of has set upon them. So we've been able to have some good conversations, but today we're going to be talking with KJ, and I'm so excited about that. So thank you for joining us, KJ.
Of course, thank you.
So KJ, the first question that I want to ask is, how do you identify yourself when it comes to ethnicity and to culture and stuff like that?
Yeah, I identify as a white woman, and I have Dutch background. My family is from the Netherlands, but I don't necessarily celebrate that culture a lot. But yeah, I would identify as white.
Another question that I want to ask is, why have you chosen to lend us your eyes here for this episode?
So I chose to lend you guys my eyes because I think that one of the biggest parts of just learning racial reconciliation is learning and listening to people. And during this time, especially with the George Floyd and all the racial stuff coming up right now, I have learned a lot. And I've been very fortunate to grow up in a family where I've been raised, obviously, like at Dunamis, because my mom is the director. And so I've been raised in a very racially diverse environment, and I'm very thankful for that. And so I'm eager to share my perspective and just help other people grow and learn about what it's like to be white and that type of stuff.
Another question that I want to ask is, I would love if you could share with us a little bit your story, growing up here in California, all the way to where you're at right now. If you could share with us a little bit your story and maybe also add a little bit about your Camp Dunamis experience.
Yeah, for sure. So I've grown up in California my whole life. I've gone to the same school my whole life. I've been in the same house my whole life. I haven't had a whole lot of change, which is nice. But yeah, I can be comfortable sometimes. But I would say I've grown up in an awesome home. I have the best parents I could ask for. I have two brothers who I love, even though sometimes I won't admit that to them. They are good. And I've grown up in a pretty diverse environment. I would say my neighborhood is diverse. My school is kind of diverse, not as much as other parts of my life. My church is pretty diverse, and obviously Dunamis. My mom has been the director since I was born, and so I've been at Dunamis since I was 3 weeks old, and every year since then. And so I'm really thankful for that, because as I grow and discover what it looks like to be white and what it looks like to support my non-white friends and have conversations, my parents have just really come alongside me in that and encouraged me to have those hard conversations. And so growing up at Valley, which is the school I go to, Valley Christian, it was very much, in the younger years, it wasn't really diverse, but as I got older, it became more diverse. And as I got older, I started to realize more things about it and start to be more intentional about having conversations with people and just listening to their stories and hearing what it's like to live life from their perspective. I'm still not perfect at it, but I'm trying to learn every day. And another thing that has been really cool about my growing up is my dad is just, and both my parents, but my dad specifically, is always pushing me and encouraging me to ask difficult questions, whether it's about the Bible or whether it's about race or whether it's about anything, to ask these difficult questions, not just accept what I've been told my whole life, and to make sure that what I believe is biblically sound, but also what I truly believe. And so that's been really good for me to learn, and it's helped me grow because it's helped me to take my faith as my own and my opinions on racial matters as my own, and it's just helped me to not only grow closer to God, but also stronger in my beliefs.
So you mentioned that you kind of grew around in an environment that helped you a lot understand, what it means to build bridges with people and to kind of find ways to reconcile when it comes to race and stuff like that, like what Camp Dunamis stands for. So I would love to hear a little bit, what have been some like encouraging things that have come out of building those bridges with people from every race and every ethnicity?
For sure. I would say a big thing is just seeing people around me grow with me, especially when we're talking about white people, other people who look like me. It's so exciting to, as we walk this journey and we start to have conversations, and even if these are hard conversations that we're having, it's exciting to see them start to grow and start to understand. And so, for example, like I had a friend the other day who reached out to me on Instagram, and she was like, "Hey, KJ, like, I have realized that I've been very ignorant to all the stuff that's been going on lately. Like, I want to learn. Can you help me?" And so things like that, like little things where people are starting to understand and want to get to know things when they haven't, those are really encouraging. And I would also say for people who don't look like me, just having conversations and learning about them and hearing what it's like to live life in their shoes is really just encouraging, and I enjoy listening to that and just getting to know and just furthering my knowledge and understanding of what the world is like for people who don't look like me.
Yeah, for sure. And in asking the good, I guess I also have to have the negative. Have there been any difficulties when it came to building those bridges?
There have. I would say for a lot of times when people aren't willing to listen and they just want to have a conversation to prove that they're right, that can be very frustrating and just exhausting sometimes. And I will also say that when I'm having conversations with people of color, sometimes a difficulty for me is I don't want to say the wrong thing, and I don't always know what to ask. I don't always know what to say, and because this isn't what I live every day, and it is what they live. And so it's just hard for me to know sometimes what to say. And so going into that more, it's like, it's so important that people create safe spaces for you to not be perfect. And I think I can be so thankful that, especially Dunamis, and when I say that Dunamis has been a blessing, it's because I can go up to people and I can ask them questions, and I can go and have conversations that I might not have with normal people because I'd be too scared to get it wrong. And they'll respond in love, and they'll teach me, and they'll help me grow. And I've made mistakes, and I've said things that I didn't even realize were offensive, but people call me out in a loving way. And so I think it's been a hard thing, but it's also been great when people are willing to help you grow and learn in a loving way. And then sure. The last thing that I would say has been a difficulty with white people is I have grown up in an environment where I realized that white privilege is a thing, but it's hard when people don't realize that or they're offended by it. And so I can go into a little bit of my story about white privilege and just learning that existed and that I had that and I lived into it because it was a journey for me for sure. Yeah. So I was in 7th grade and I was in a chapel, and the speaker of the chapel was just talking about, basically she was talking about white privilege. She didn't use the word, because we're 7th graders, we wouldn't really understand it. But she was just talking about it, and one thing she mentioned is like, when you go to a store, you can buy Band-Aids that are my skin color, right? So like I put a Band-Aid on and it matches my skin tone. I don't think twice about that. I didn't choose it, but that's how it is, right? And so I walked out of that chapel and I felt guilty, to be honest. I felt guilty for being white. I didn't like it. And I felt bad that Band-Aids came in my skin tone because I didn't necessarily want that. I didn't choose that, but it's like, why is it like that? Like, I don't like that. And so it was a couple of years where I just didn't like being white, to be honest. And I would learn things. I would learn more stuff that I can do. I would learn history. I would hear stories. And I didn't like being white because I didn't like what I heard other people did, or I didn't like the things that I could do that other people couldn't, like Band-Aids, for example. And so, but eventually, and it was one day I realized, I was like, God didn't have to make me white though. So if God made me white, then there has to be a reason, because God doesn't dislike the fact that I'm white.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was a really big realization for me, because I had gone through years of wishing I was not white. And it's like, God doesn't wish that you're not white, Kathryn. Like, you need to be okay with that. And so that, again, was a few-year journey of just accepting that I was white, and accepting that I do have certain things that I can do. I can, like when the sun goes down, I don't have to worry about taking a hood off, for example. I can go out looking however I want. When I'm driving home at night, I don't have to worry about getting pulled over because of the way I look. When I go to a store, I'm never harassed or followed. And those are all things that I had to come to terms with, and I had to realize, but I didn't need to feel guilty about. Because I don't need to feel guilty about that, because it's not something I chose. It's not something that I want necessarily. I mean, I appreciate it, but I wish that it was that way for everyone, right? And
of course,
so it's like, I had to come to a realization that this isn't something that is my fault. And so it's a balance between being aware of the things that I can do and trying not to play into them when possible, but also not feeling guilty about it, because that's not the whole point of it. And so, especially even with all the stuff going on right now with George Floyd, has helped me even more, just like learn how to be an ally, learn how to walk alongside my friends who are not white, learn how to love and support people and have conversations. And it's just really helped me to accept that I am white and be okay with that, but also not feed into the privilege that I do have.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and I think that's a great lesson for all the students watching here. I love when you said, you realized that God wanted you to be this way. God wanted you to be white. And I think that's an important thing for all the students who are watching this right now. We must remember that God made you this way for a reason. Now, the way that we treat others, that's our decision. So that's where it becomes a matter of, am I in the wrong or am I in the right?
Yeah.
The way that we respond to other people, because we're made the way that we're made for a reason. God put us on our moms, and He said that child is gonna look like that child's gonna look like, and it's gonna be perfect in my eyes.
Exactly.
But we choose how we react to God's creation. You mentioned that it was difficult for you to kind of say that, wow, it was difficult for you to accept that, wow, I'm white. Like, I don't want to be white. So I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of students right now who might be going or are going or have gone through that similar experience as you have. So do you have any advice for those students who maybe are going through that and don't know how to respond and don't know how to react to that, or are kind of in your same boat? They're like, I'm not okay with being myself. So do you have any advice for them?
For sure. I would say one thing is, it's going to take time. It's not an overnight fix where you're just suddenly okay with yourself. So have patience for yourself. I say that to myself too, because sometimes I expect myself to be perfect right away. So have patience. Realize that, like I said, God wants you to be whatever ethnicity you are. And no matter what people around you are saying, no matter what hardships you're facing, God wanted you to be that way. You're not an accident. The color of your skin is not an accident. The hardships that you endure are not they don't make God happy, but you make God happy. And so don't be ashamed of it. But yeah, that's a hard journey. So I would also say this is, as a white person, there are certain things that I can and can't do. So for example, like in all this stuff with George Floyd, like I have kind of taken a position of learning, and I'm not on the front lines leading rallies and stuff like that. And I'm not telling everyone my story, right? Because that's not the time for this. But my position right now is to support people and to listen to people and to have conversations. And for me, I can have conversations with other white people and say, who don't necessarily realize that they have privilege, for example. And I can talk to them from a different perspective and say, hey, I was in your place once. Like, I get it. Like, it's hard to realize that you have that, right? And so that's something great about being white that I can do, because I have a different perspective, right? And so I think every single one of our students has a unique perspective and a unique position and a unique ability because of their ethnicity and their race. And so I would say, yeah, you might not be able to do certain things, but dig in and lean into the things that you can do, because God has given you unique abilities and the way that you look for a reason, and it's not an accident.
So KJ, in talking a little bit about, your experience and your way of viewing things, I also would love to ask this question. What are some things that people might say or do that maybe might not seem offensive to them, but for you, it might be an offensive thing?
The one thing that comes to mind doesn't necessarily affect me personally, but I've seen a lot of people around me who look like me, white people, get offended by this, is when people are talking about race, for example, and they say, oh, I hate it when white people do this, or white people are, or white people, and they kind of take a whole clump. They categorize all white people as whatever racist thing they're going to say they did, right? And it might be valid that some white people do that, but not all white people do that. And I personally realized, oh, they're not talking about me, and I don't get offended by that. And if you're a white person watching this, I would encourage you to kind of take a step back and realize they're not trying to attack you. They're saying it as a generalization. But then I would also say that can be very offensive and hurtful to some people who don't realize that, oh, they're not talking about you. They're talking about other white people. But I think the generalization of saying white people are, or white people did this or something, can be hard for some people to hear.
Yeah, for sure. So KJ, as we kind of start moving into our very last question, I want to ask you, how can people, for example, me, I am a Latino, Puerto Rican, but in general, how can people from any race, any ethnicity, any walk of life, how can we begin building bridges with you?
I would say a big thing is teach me, loan me your eyes, to use the phrase of what this whole thing is, because yeah, and I'm sure you've touched on this in previous episodes, but I can only see life as a 18-year-old white female, right? And so there's a lot of stuff that I don't necessarily know, and I can be ignorant on topics, and I don't like that, but that's just reality if we're being honest. So I would say, teach me, have conversations, tell me stories, and I will do my best to ask questions to instigate that, right? And just listen. But I love getting to know people and what people are like, and it gives me a greater perspective of how we can build bridges. And so I would say, teach me, but also have patience with me, because I am white and I can be ignorant at times and I can say wrong things. So call me out when I do say wrong things, and tell me, hey KJ, you shouldn't have said it that way. And I will take that and I will learn and I will try to move forward from that. But not only teach me, but have patience with me, because unfortunately I'm not perfect all the time. So yeah.
So KJ, once more, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you here with us and to hear your side of the story and your point of view. For those who are watching, if you haven't seen any of our other interviews, please go check them out. We have some great conversations with different people, and some interesting perspectives that I think all of us could use to learn and to grow, like KJ said. So if you are interested in following us in all our social medias, the links are going to be in the description, either below or above. I don't know where it's going to be, but wherever it is, you can go check the description for all those links and all those things. Please make sure to tune in tonight for our very last chapel. I know, last chapel, but there you're going to be able to see me and KJ doing some awesome worship. So make sure to hop on and check that out. And if this is the last time that I see you, thank you so much for joining me in this journey of talking with different people from different races, ethnicities. And KJ, I want to say to you, thank you for loaning us your eyes.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye, everyone. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our awesome producer and behind the scenes person, Akila. You're not seeing her right now on the screen, but she has been listening in to every single one of our episodes and giving us feedback and helping the show just run smoothly. So I just want to give a quick thank you to Akila and for all the hard work that you have done throughout this week. We are so thankful for you and for your dedication to this project. So everybody else, have a good one.